After such a long time of hearing bad news all the time, finally we are hearing some good news. So yesterday, the US President has announced that they will be reducing tariff of 25% on Indian goods and bring it down to 18%. Though it was not explicitly stated that what will happen to the 25% additional penalty imposed on India on account of on account of Russian oil purchases, but since there have been a lot of statements by US authorities, and also in his social media post he has mentioned that India has already stopped buying oil from Russia and will be diversifying towards the US and Venezuelan oil. So this clearly indicates that that additional 25% may also be revised down to zero. So this will in effect bring India's total tariff from 50% to 18%. This is a very big news and a very big shot in the arm for Indian rice exports, because as we have seen that India's exports to the US are quite substantial. US is the 4th largest market for Indian basmati rice and the 10th largest market for non-basmati rice. US imported around 335,000 metric tons last year, valued at approximately 390 million USD. And this year, from April till November, for which data is available, we have seen that these exports stand at around 240,000 metric tons, valued at around 233 million USD. Now, this is very significant because there is one key parameter that we have to look at, that even after a steep increase in tariff, that is when in April 2025, this tariff, which earlier stood at 10%, was suddenly increased to 50%. First to 25, then another 25. So total of 50% tariff, a 40% increase in tariff in a commodity like rice is quite substantial. But we have seen that in spite of this steep increase, Indian exports to the US, on the contrary, had increased if we compare it with the same period last year. So if we look at the figures, post-August, we have data for September, October, and November. So in these 3 months, in 2024, India exported around 65,000 metric tons of rice to the US. But after imposition of this tariff, this quantity actually increased to 75,000 metric tons, which was a very surprising statistic. This clearly shows that India's exports to the US are purely demand-driven, and it is the competitiveness of Indian exports and also the indispensable nature of Indian goods in the global supply chain that our exports are increasingly growing. And as the prevalence of Indian cuisines and the popularity of Indian food is growing throughout the world for dishes such as biryani, this clearly shows that India is on the path of recovery. Now let us look at where we stand today. India's total tariff now, which stands at 18%. India's major competitors like Thailand and Pakistan are at 19%. Though this difference of 1% is not much, but today India is in a position where we have record production. We have become the world's largest producer of rice with a production of 149 million metric tons. In a situation like this, where we have a lot of diversity, lot of strength in our domestic market, and we are all well set to export to the entire world, having a parity with our competitor nations, and that slight advantage will go a long way in capturing a much larger market share in the US market. In US's imports from other competing nations today stand at around $1.2 billion. Since India's exports is only $391 million, this clearly shows that there is a scope to increase our exports to the US multifold. And given the fact that Thailand and Pakistan, which majorly comprise this 1.2 billion worth of imports to the US, will now face a slightly higher tariff than India, would make India a global powerhouse to now supply to the US. I would like to also clarify one thing, that last time when this tariff was imposed, we had stated through your platform that these situations tend to resolve on their own. Like we have seen in the current case, that though tariffs have been steeply increased, but now they have come down. But in the domestic market in the US, the price of rice has gone up. A 5-pound bag, a 10-pound bag, which is the most popular packaging in the US, was earlier being sold before the tariff situation at around $13 per bag, which later on increased to $19. This clearly showed that the entire tariff burden was being borne by the US consumer. But there is a small caveat over here. Now, since the tariff have come down, the prices in the domestic markets don't come down proportionately. So this is a time for Indian exporters to cash in, for India's farmers to cash in and to earn profits, because this is our time now. I would also like to address another concern with respect to the threats that were made to Iran. The US president had stated that India would be subject, or any other nation would be subject to a tariff of 25% if they do business with the Islamic Republic of Iran. But we have seen that such trade deals are not just commercial realignment, they are also a political realignment as well. So the trade does not expect the US to now follow through on its threat. And India, we do not expect that India will be subject to any other additional penalties for trade with Iran. Saying that, today India is in a very powerful position to increase its exports, and this has been the trend, and we will be working closely with all stakeholders to take advantage of this situation and to capture the market share currently held by India's competitors.